a very special guest with me, Kevin Brewer of the Northeast region with Arborjet as well. So we'll be kind of splitting and conversating about plant healthcare tonight. Kevin, you want to tell a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, sure thing. So, I've been in plant healthcare for about 15 years. My background is in, general management of tree care companies. So, Trent asked me to come on just, during my 10 years experience running plant healthcare crews and, growing that part of the industry. So, I look forward to sharing that knowledge with you. And, now I'm with Arborjet. So, that's what I do throughout the Northeast is just work with people to, just increase their plant healthcare productivity and efficiency.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. A little bit of information for you guys. The Rescue Rally applications are due August 19th. And the next upcoming webinar will be with Christian Michael Schultz on August 27th. And that'll be an industry trends and talking. I think we're ready to go ahead and get rolling with the presentation then. All right. So to kind of get started with about selling plant healthcare, I thought it would be good to talk about salesmen and what different types there are. Kevin's going to get into the business part of it, but are true salesmen born or made in this? And there's a lot of research and a lot of studies about this, but typically over 70% of your top salesmen have, which make them a lot more successful at selling. So less than 30% of our top salesmen are self-made. They're without natural instincts. So of 100 self-made salesmen, 40% will either fail or quit in the beginning. 40% will just be average, and 20% will be above average. So finding the right guy for your company can make or break you. You're definitely going to be more likely to hire a self-made salesman than a natural one. But what are some of the factors that can make this successful? We're going to talk about that. So some of the interview questions that you would do when you're trying to find the salesman or this arborist for you. What traits do they have? Are they optimistic? So you're going to put them in a situation or a task when you're interviewing them, and see what has challenged them. How do they get out of these insurmountable actions that they have? Bad outcome. What do they do to change the challenges? Ask them that question in the situation, and then ask the result. How did it improve their company? Did the bad outcome, were they able to fix it? How did they move forward with it? So these are some of the questions, in the interview process that you're going to ask to try to find out what is happening with them. But natural talent really isn't enough, guys. We need training. You need a process on how you want the sales process done. There's lots of companies out there to help with training processes. Dale Carnegie, there's Action Selling, there's the Jack Walsh Management Group. There's tons of different classes out there. But 99% of the people, when they go out to do sales, they don't have a commitment objective. And they're talking way too much when you need to really listen to see what the customer is. They're going to ask the wrong questions. They're going to fail to make your company stand out, to show what your brand is about. They're going to fail to ask for commitment in that aspect of it. So we're going to talk about selling, how we're trying to gain commitment from every customer. So there's commitment objective for every sales call with every prospect. So some of the commitments might be getting an appointment to meet with a customer, confirming your plans to meet their needs. While you're there, setting up the next meeting to come back out and review what you did. And then at the end, am I going to get the sale? Am I going to get the contract? Those are all part of the process that we're looking to get when we're moving forward in this. So selling, it's an art. It needs training, and we can do that, but we also need to be able to ask to build a relationship with our customers so we understand them, because let's face it, networking, building relationships, having that understanding with our customers are key. So We need to ask personal questions, what their needs are, what their objective of this project is, a budget in mind, because then we know how much there are, competition, the different time frames. Are the people that are present here to make the decisions, are they there? You know, is the husband not there and he's going to help make the decision? So we need to know all these answers when we're out there trying to figure out what their needs are. Should you ask open or closed questions? You need to do both, guys. This is very important when we're out in the plant healthcare industry. You know, we need to know the who, what, when, where, and why. And the open questions will allow you to gather information. You know, have you ever had tree work done previously? You know, why did you call us this week? How long have your trees been here? You know, do you want them protected? Can I walk around the entire yard? You know, these are all good open-ended questions. And then you can go into the more closed questions to clarify the responses and qualify as necessary. You know, more about that. Open questions will invite you more information giving. You know, they're going to tell you more about the problems that that they're seeing. You know, where you could ask this question: where can caterpillars be a real problem on your cherry trees? Did you notice any of the webbing last year? You know, those are the questions that are going to get you more into the details. You know, asking. You know, we had severe drought. Did it affect your landscape? Did you see plants that were stressing? You know, some of those are all interesting ways. You know, when did you install this landscape? You know, was it 15, 20 years ago? Uh, Preserve it now. How can we keep in check? And then the needs questions. You know, these are how we go to uncover the prospects, the needs that are critical to match your service and products that you need. An example would be by discussing trunk injections. You know, what do you expect from these results? You know, with this trunk injection, we're going to protect this emerald ash borer for up to 2 years with one injection. To where if we would do a bark spray or a soil injection, we may only get 1 year of protection. So that's making you different from others because you're giving that 2 years of protection. You're assuring that their tree won't die, because if we don't treat for emerald ash borer, that ash tree will die. We can guarantee that. If you don't treat, it will die. So those are some of the needs and wants questions. The next thing too that's really important when you're out there is selling your company. You know, what does your company do? Explaining that. What's your company's reputation or your brand, and why is this company good for them? What are you going to bring to the table? These are all key things that you want to discuss and talk about. So when you're selling your product or your service, the plant healthcare, you're going to review what the customer needed from the walk around, from the information that you gathered. And then you're going to state, you know, this is what this treatment's going to do to treat your emerald ash borer. And this is going to give you the protection that we talked about for 2 years. This is a real benefit to you because you won't have to worry about it the next year. And then you would follow up. Is that satisfying your needs of what we expected in this group? So those are all things that are helping build selling your product or service in that aspect of it. Kevin, do you have anything you want to add to that in your experience?
Just, you know, when you get on a job and you're bidding work, you want to find out as much as you can about the person's preferences on the property, the history of the property, you know, and then, you know, try to get involved and see why they care about the tree in the first place. You know, whether it's a memorial tree or, you know, just been there for a while, and just trying to get kind of a connection with the customer and really find out why that tree is important, why that project might be important. You know, if you can get them to have a little more passion towards what's going on, you know, it's going to go a long way, and they're going to feel like you care a lot more if you can get those answers on.
And you're connecting with the customer, which is key. That is really good advice. And then the real final thing, you know, you want to do is, can I get your business? You ask for them. 40% of the people will never get to this. They don't ask, can I have your business? You know, can I take care of your trees? Can I fertilize your shrubs? Ask them for the business. Um, and then confirm the sale. Help eliminate the fear, uncertainty, doubt that the homeowners may have. Assure them that the decision was right. It was a good one. Tell the customer how much you appreciate their business. Send them a follow-up email thanking them. Schedule the treatment. That will become the customer's focus, and then the agreement's been made. So these are all very important things when you're trying to sell plant healthcare to be successful. And then kind of just to summarize further into it, this is really a systemic sales process. We're trying to designate a limited number of technicians or salesmen with PHC interest, so we can enhance their skills. We're going to give them training. There's always opportunities for online trainings, webinars, just like this. There's trade schools. Rutgers offer different programs in my area. All these things are ways to do it. Choose a limited number of pests. Kevin's going to get into a lot of this, but we're going to narrow it down on what diseases and that. Maybe you're just treating for emerald ash borer and you're just going to fertilize trees and shrubs. You're going to try to hire the right people, but if you can't always hire the right people, you may be able to train them in. You want to teach your technicians, your guys that are out there, how to upsell. Because this is an easy way to do add-on business. That's very simple, and we can teach them. We're going to just not just sell a menu of PHC services, but we're going to tailor programs to different landscapes. We're going to look at what their soil types are. We're going to use a prescription type thing, like our Arborists fertility program. These are ways that you can prescribe what these customers need and fulfill them. And this will be an easy way to help grow your business. Fertilization of plants is a simple way to add plant health fertilization with the different types of soil types that new homes are built in and everything else. But the other thing that we have to talk about is treatment without proper diagnosis. It's malpractice. Lindsay Purcell's did many talks on here about pruning and all that. So we have to respect the scientific gains of others. We need to apply all measures required, and we don't want to overtreat. We want to do a good IPM. There is no saying an I don't know. We have to research. We may not know what's going on at the property right away. We may need to get a test, a soil test. Is a very easy way. Just having a soil probe and being able to pull out what's in the soil. Is it sand? Is it clay? And prevention is preferably to a cure. If we can stop something from happening because we caught it before, the trees are stressing because they don't have enough water. Is there a product that we can use to help with watering so it isn't needed as much to where the rain can do it? All these are things that we want to keep in mind. Observations, pest or disease. History is important, but not always available. Did they drive construction trucks through that oak tree to put in the driveway and it's got compacted roots and the soil is that. So we have to look at all the different things that could go on in the landscape. Take your time, walk the property. Your first initial visit is when you're going to find things, but hopefully you're going to be able to sign them up to where you can continue to walk and find things. So these are all to keep in mind. Kevin, would you have when you go out to the property to look at things?
Yeah, always just, even when you're driving up to a property, even look at the neighbors' houses when you're coming up. If somebody's plants are doing poorly, usually in a neighborhood, the soils are pretty similar. Look for plants in somebody else's yard that are doing pretty well, the other ones that are doing sick, and the commonalities in an area. If you see that everybody's rhododendrons are looking pretty bad, you might want to switch that out for a different type of plant. If everybody on the south side of the streets look bad and everybody on the north look good, it's probably a sun-shade problem. So, just finding those, looking at how the whole area ties together and not just focusing on one property can give you a lot of clues also.
Absolutely. Need to keep in mind that, the predisposing factors, stress. Improper temperature, changes in it, not as cold as it's been, excess soil moisture, 5 inches of rain, a drought, improper nutrition. Was it planted right? How many trees are not planted right? The volcano mulches, improper light, humidity, wet foliage, weed eaters. All these can come into play in that things. How does stress exhibit itself? Well, we're going to see reduced growth, abnormal foliage, color, size. A tree going to early fall color is a sign of stress. Premature leaf drop, wilting. All these are factors that play into it that will cause issues. But where does the process begin is when we walk onto the property, being able to properly ID the tree, the shrub, know what normal is for these trees or shrubs. One of the easiest ways, if you're not sure of finding something out, guys, is to Google it. Take a picture of it. See what comes up on Google. It may point you in the right direction. Being a certified arborist is great, but we also need to be able to read books, educate ourselves, always trying to find out what is different. Every day I see different things. What are some common problems in plants, to treat or not to treat? How severe is the disease or the insects? Do we need to treat, or is it something that we can get by? Is it harmful? Did the customer want us to do that? These are all some of the things when we're trying to sell plant healthcare, we have to make decisions on what to do. Some of the abnormal signs or symptoms, frass, fungus holes, ambrosia beetles were really bad. Is it a woodpecker, going around the tree causing the severe damage? These are all things that we're looking for. Some of the other symptoms might be wilting, scorch, fire blight, chlorosis. They're all the same symptoms, but they're produced by multiple different causes. And these are all different things that we have to look at. How did the tree respond to it? What does the leaf look like in that symptoms? As you can see with the frass holes going around, the wood going around it. But the ambrosia beetles, you see the little toothpicks and you're like, oh, we got problems. And those are brought on by stress typically. Can we go to the next slide, Gil? So, scorch, you see the fire blight, but these are all, there could be 4 symptoms, but it's by multiple causes. So we have to learn to identify what is going on with the tree, whether it's a wilt, scorch, a dieback, it was stunted because of growth, maybe it didn't get enough water. All these are different things that we have to look at. And looking at the general health of the tree compared to the other tree, in this slide coming up right here, you can look at the last year's growth. Did it seem like it was healthy? Did we have a large amount of growth? Was it an inch, inch and a half, or was it a half inch? Was it stunted? How does the buds look like? Did it look like the terminal bud died back? And this, where's the bud scar? These are some ways to look at the general health of the tree and see what, and you can tell for a few years how well this tree's doing or not, as long as you can reach the branches. Look for patterns of damage. Is it isolated to one plant? Is the neighbor's plants have something? Bacterial leaf scorch. It comes on towards the end of July when we get some heat. Did the neighbor's tree have it? Are there other trees in the street? You're always looking when you're driving into the neighborhood, as Kevin was saying, is there a uniform or random pattern? Older leaves or newer leaves? Do we see it on both? These are all that we want to look for and see. And now I'm going to kind of let Kevin dive into kind of what it is to be preventative and talk about, with his experience as a general manager, how to sell plant healthcare. And we'll ask some questions as we move forward. And
all right, thank you. So we'll go to the next slide or two. All right, so a good way to make in a plant healthcare company, you have to work more on the preventative side of issues than the therapeutic side. Responding to problems, whether it may be, boring insects, armillaria root rot, those take a tree down pretty fast and are very expensive to treat. So you can see, it's kind of a spiral of decline that brings down trees. There's always either, an environmental issue, an inciting factor, and then you get those really bad issues is when you usually get called. So working on those predisposing issues like the site conditions, is the tree drought stressed? Was there construction damage? Is the soil limited root zone, heat stress? Those are all things that cause trees to start failing to other things like boring insects, root rots, nematodes, verticillium wilt, and things like that. So you can make money treating for those problems that take trees down quickly, but you're going to exhaust your customers' finances, and eventually they'll just decide to remove the tree and plant something else. So you have to react to the problem there, but also figure out what's causing that problem. And often, that's where, a sustainable business comes into play, is amending that soil, working with the soils, mulching, make a healthier environment so that tree can take care of itself. And then you switch it over to just, prune that tree every couple of years, keep an eye on it, once you've got it stable. So you've got to kind of break that cycle of poor health, sustainable plant healthcare model. Get in there, solve the problem, and then get towards that preventative side and find out why it's gone wrong. Another great reason that's really going to help in the long run is it's a more acceptable, green way of providing plant health. A lot of people have that poor vision of pesticides. They're kind of afraid of the word. It's kind of a hot topic. So, if you're always in there spraying neonicotinoids on the trunks of trees and soil drenching, pesticides and things like that, you're going to have less customers. You have to have, more acceptable ways of dealing with problems. So, working with, healthy roots, girdling roots, root pruning, tree pruning, general health of the tree to kind of sustain them and help them defend themselves. You'll have a lot more customers just because it's a much more accepted practice. Like I said, with the pesticides, a lot of people are just going to be afraid to do it, and they'll decide to remove the tree rather than try to save it. So, having those more environmentally conscious ways of taking care of things will grow your business. And that other reason is, we have to have trees that sustain for a long time. We can't just have a world of 8 or 10 inch diameter, red oaks or maples. It's not inspiring. These two trees are just massive. One is the Pincho sycamore, which is the largest tree in the state of Connecticut. And the other one's a pen oak down in Pennsylvania, massive white oak, hundreds of years old. And these trees are inspiring when you walk up to them. These are the kind of things that, make somebody want to get into plant healthcare. It's almost like a religious experience when you come across these things. So, this is why we have to have sustainable ways of taking care of trees so they can get to this age to inspire the next generation of people to care, and really have people understand how grand these things can be. The trees that size can have a massive impact on the environment. So many benefits with those big mature trees, more than just a carbon sequestration. Ability to make you feel better when you walk by these things is, speaks volumes. So some of the most common issues that we deal with is, living in the urban environment, compacted soils. So, when you come onto a job site and you see this problem, you kind of have to ask yourself, why is the soil compacted? And then what can be done to fix it? So why is it compacted has to do with what your long-term plan is going to be. In this scenario, this is going to be a lot of foot traffic caused this problem, most likely, or it's a construction area. So if you just went in there with an air spade to break that up and add a little more porosity to the soil and go away, that soil is just going to be recompacted in no time at all. It's the same human condition, the same urban environment. All you've done is react to the problem, but you haven't solved why. Again, mulching, you could put mulch down on this, and that's going to stop traffic from compacting the soil. And mulch is a great way to decompact soil over time. That natural decomposition of that organic matter is going to get, earthworms, organisms, and microbes all working and help that soil profile. But it's going to take a long time. So you've got to look at how far that tree is in decline and decide, what is the best way to go about this. If it's going to be a long-term a long-term impact, not a construction site, like it's just a park, then air spading and mulch is the best way to go. So you've got to fix it quickly if that tree's in decline, and do something that's going to fix it in the long run. Let's go to the next slide. It's all right. So you've also got to look at the pros and cons of these. How much labor you put in to how much those results are going to benefit the customer and their property. So, some of the pros of air spading is you can get pretty fast results. You can loosen that soil up really, really quick. It's easy to get amendments in there. If you've got a real, clay-based soil or sandy soils, you might be able to incorporate a little more organic matter in there. And that's going to help, the nutrient exchange between the, the tree and the soil. So, that air spade is going to be a great way to get, that soil amended quickly, decompact it. And it's great because, the customer can see the work was done. That's always nice. Sometimes in plant healthcare, what you do is invisible, especially on the preventative side. When you show up and fertilize a tree, there's not really any proof you did it. The tree just still looks good every, year over year. Another pro air spade is I always thought it was extremely fun. It's a blast to do. I used to go at it for days at a time. You'd rent your compressor and try to line everything up. I just really enjoyed it. Some of the cons, though, is the equipment is expensive. To own one of those compressor spade, can be up to $20,000. You need a lot of airflow. So you end up having to rent the equipment in most scenarios. So you're going to be, a couple $100 a day to rent them. And the best time to do air spading is in fall when the trees before they go dormant, or early spring before they come out, which puts you in competition with irrigation companies trying to do blowouts and everything like that. So the equipment can be kind of scarce. The other drawback to it is air spading is going to be a lot more skilled labor involved than the mulch route. Don't volcano mulch, don't put it down too deep. It's not that complicated to mulch something correctly. Air spading, on the other hand, how much soil are you breaking up? Have you gone far enough? So your labor cost is going to be a little higher for air spading. So, you have to consider those factors in on, the profitability of plant healthcare. How fast does this tree need to be turned around? How much labor do I have to put into it, and all those things. And like we said before, it could be a temporary fix. So, you got to combine it with other things sometimes. Yeah.
Kevin, on the air spade work, how would you price that? Is that by the tree, by the job? How would you do that when you were the general manager? How would you go about pricing air spading?
So I went about pricing air spade work. You want to get a skilled plant healthcare guy on the job, and you're renting a piece of equipment. You want to be getting $200 to $300 per hour. Even if it's an all-day thing, you need to be getting, $2,400, $2,500 to have a guy out there and another guy cleaning up. And if it's a small job, you have to just, imagine the value of the tree too. If you're trying to air spade a Kuza dogwood to fine girdling roots, and it's a 5-inch diameter tree, and you're only going to be there for half hour, 45 minutes, you're still going to have to get, $300, $400 for that tree, for that labor to work out for them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, so mulch, which is another great way to decompact soil. Pros, it's a very low material cost. The cost of mulch, if you make it yourself as a tree company, it's really just, a way of using resources. Even if you have to buy it, you can usually get it in bulk for about $30 a yard. In that manner, it is a very low material cost. Low labor cost to put it down. Like you said, you kind of send a truck and a couple guys that just have a wheelbarrow, pitchfork, good work ethic. They're going to get the job done. It does add organic matter to the soil, so mulch is going to add more of a permanent solution to problems than just air spading alone. So that's what's a benefit. Where if you have a poor soil, 5, 6, 7 years down the road with proper mulching, you're going to have a really healthy soil just naturally over time. And it does have those permanent effects. The cons. Customers sometimes, they've got that favorite tree in the middle of the front yard. It's grass right up to the trunk, and they just want grass. So sometimes the con is convincing the customer to change the look up a little bit. You've got to convince them to maybe, throw a couple more shrubs in there, some ornamentals, some perennials, some grasses, not digging big holes, obviously, near trees where you might hit some roots, but putting in some smaller plantings and some mulch around that tree and getting the customer to kind of change their mind about, having that lawn all the way up to the front. So sometimes it's a fight. If you've got a 30-inch diameter tree, even if you can just get 6-foot radius around that thing, you're going to have benefits. Obviously, 15 feet, half that distance to the drip edge, or half that diameter in feet, you're going to have obviously much greater benefits. But even if you can get just 1/5 that diameter transferred into feet around that tree, you're going to find benefits. And then the effects do take time. Like I said, mulching alone can take years to loosen up the soil. So that picture in the background there, that's the front yard of my house several years ago. I didn't update that picture. It's just crabgrass front lawn. I popped in a couple, birches and shrubs and just mulched the whole thing. Waited a couple years and then just kept slowly adding things. And now, I don't really have to water that. That's good organic matter added to the soil. That takes care of itself. I don't have to use a lot of pesticides to control that. Just because the soil itself is so healthy, the plants are healthy. So that's what you got to do. You got to build that natural environment. Plant diversity, not a monoculture, have a lot of different things, and try to get things that flower from beginning of the season to end. You'll attract a lot more beneficials that way. If you want to get a green lacewing, to come be a nice natural predator of, aphids or, soft scale, things like that, you got to give them something else to eat. The larvae prefers to be the beneficial insect, but the adult likes flowers. It likes pollen and nectar. So you're not going to attract the adult to lay its eggs unless you have those, the flowers to feed them. So you've got to have a nice, diverse landscape to get the benefits of a nature in a lot of cases. So you're just kind of faking that that natural environment. Trees are used to being in the woods, and we took them out of the woods for the most part. So as close to that natural thing as possible around, you'll see the benefits. So there are other ways that we can go around either, just air spading and mulching. And this is where the more plant healthcare comes into play. You can speed up the benefits of how fast mulch break down by, increasing microbial activity. A lot of people have, kind of put mycorrhizae down. They're always, deep root feeding and mycorrhizae, deep root feeding, mycorrhizae. And that was the big thing for a long time. But if you really think about what you're trying to accomplish, mycorrhizae is already there. The trees would be dead if there was no symbiotic relationship going on in that soil. There's already some fungi down there. What they need is they need carbohydrates. That's what they take from the tree in exchange for the benefits they give them. Is they take some carbohydrates from the tree and they grow and they multiply until there's a balance in what the tree can give in carbos to what the fungi can give the trees. So it's more beneficial in a lot of times to add carbohydrates to the area to increase that microbial activity by feeding that fungi more than the tree could, and they'll naturally expand in population. If you just keep adding mycorrhizae to the soil, it doesn't add more food for them. So you'll kind of hit a wall in what's naturally being provided. So adding more food in a lot of times can be more beneficial than just keeping adding that mycorrhizae. Without you can keep multiplying your, say, like you're a farmer. If you want more eggs, you don't just keep buying more chickens. You got to feed them more too. So, also, the increased speed of that mulch is, and while you're waiting for that to break down, you may still have a sandy soil that has low organic matter, which has a poor cation exchange capacity. So you can do something like add humic acid to the soil, and that's going to kind of fake that organic matter until it's there naturally. So you can get benefits really quick by adding things like the carbohydrates to break the mulch down faster and humic acid to kind of fake that organic matter until it's there. So you've got your 4 or 5 years you have to go and put these additives into the soil to fake the benefits. And then in the long run, the mulch takes over eventually, and then you've got your balance. So, it's kind of a balance between faking a natural environment until you can make it. And if you can't completely make that natural environment, you kind of slowly just keep using those other other products in time if people don't allow you to completely make that scenario. So in this next part, we're going to talk about those additives that we can use to make that environment that trees like. Because quite often the trees aren't where they want to be. Like I said, trees want to be in the forest or in their own growing condition, not always the forest. Sometimes there's edge trees. There are trees that like fields, like red cedars and things like that. But they'll have their preferred growing area. So when we don't have that, these are some options that we can throw in there in the interim. So BioMP is basically the soil additive that we have that's carbohydrates. And again, the benefits from that is it's a food source for the microbes. It's going to decompact the soil quicker. It's going to break mulch down faster. It's going to speed the benefits up of what might take 5 years down to just a couple years. So it just really speeds that process up. It restores that healthy soil biology, improves plant vigor greatly. And, you're going to use that, again, sandy soils, clay soils. And when you finally get to put that mulch down, if you have even a lawn that has really thick thatch that's starting to build up and rot out lawn, adding carbohydrates may sound like, you might think, well, if I'm having a little bit of a rot issue from that, it might be a bad idea, but actually it's a good idea because it's going to break that thatch down and get it out of the way. So again, this is a great molasses product for that carbohydrate to use in those situations. Go to the next slide. I think I froze. All right, I'm just going to wait for it to catch up on my end. So the EnviroPlex is our product that is just a humic acid. So we can add that to increase cation exchange capacity in the soil, kind of fake that organic matter until it catches up. And these are all the things that you're prescribing uniquely to fix a scenario. Just the NPK game, the 20-20-20s, 20-10-20s, all those NPK, you really should do a soil test before just going after those macronutrients. These products will have a little bit of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium because they exist in almost everything. But, the goal isn't NPK onto plants. So being able to tailor to a site with more what that soil needs to provide things naturally is going to be a more sustainable approach than the what I call the steroid approach of high NPK fertilizers. And a lot of times if you've got a tree in a lawn and that lawn's being fertilized, it's already got plenty of NPK. A tree only needs about a half pound to a pound per 1,000 square feet of root zone. Less than lawn care usually puts down. And if you have mulch naturally biodegrading in the soils and you're adding that organic matter and the tree's getting watered regularly, they're probably not going to need too much nitrogen either. In all the soil tests I did over the years, I very rarely saw that lacking except for new construction. Next. So this is a seaweed extract. This is another thing that we can do to increase root growth in plants. It's been long known the benefits of seaweed in farming and agriculture, not always known why, but cytokinins are what's in seaweed that's really helpful to plants, especially in Atlantic kelp, which is what we have here. Back in the early days, people would take all that seaweed, they'd put it into their crops, they'd till it under. It was great organic matter, it had a lot of nutrients, but the biggest benefit to using that seaweed was the cytokinins. They knew it worked better, but it wasn't really understood why until, now with new advancements, we can find out exactly what it is in seaweed that was so beneficial. But it's been used for hundreds of years. So this is going to encourage rooting, increase establishment and recovery, increase transplant survival, improve all sorts of stress tolerances. So seaweed extracts, again, getting these in there, getting trees established, nothing's going to lose you money faster than losing new plantings. So if we can get those soils to be better for the tree, get that tree to root faster, kind of combining these things is going to gives you that success over years. And when they establish faster, they grow faster, more healthy growth also. So, you can do your structural pruning every couple of years for the first 5-10 years as you're supposed to, and then just get a really nice established tree in the end. We'll go to the next slide. So we do have Arborplex, which is, a 14-4-5 NPK if you were to need it. It is a half slow nitrogen, half slow release, half faster release. And this is a great nitrogen source if you do need it. Sometimes you might need nitrogen if you're in, say you're in an area where a tree's planted in lawn, the lawn's not being fertilized, which happens quite often. There are a lot of people that don't really get into lawn care. and they're mowing the clippings, bagging them, and removing them. So that's a scenario where you're getting put back into the environment. So that kind of landscape where nothing is really ever being added, it's just being taken away by lawn clippings, that's when you would probably see nitrogen lacking in your soil testing. And this would be a great thing to add into that. If you see very poor growth, if you have poor root uptake, sometimes, inciting a little growth in the short term is a great idea. So then there's, kind of the all-in-one, which is, we have NutriRoot, which has, has a little bit of iron, but it has those seaweed extracts. It has humic acids. It has surfactants. And the other benefit this has is it has the other additive is it has a hygroscopic humectant in it, which is complicated, but basically it boils down to, it's the same moisturizer is for your hands. When you put moisturizer on your hands, they don't stay damp all day because they're greasy. What that's doing is attracting that little bit of humidity in the air to your hands to keep your skin moist. So we were able to work with some products and get that kind of working for plants. So when you put this down, it binds to the organic matter in the root zone. And as water tries to evaporate throughout the day, it's going to attract and condense that moisture vapor into usable water again. So this product is the best thing best scenario for plant establishment. It has the seaweed extracts to grow roots. It has a moisture control product that isn't something you have to water in. It's just effective with humidity. Not high NPK. It's not going to cause a lot of outward growth. So you're going to have great root growth. The humic acid is going to condition the soil, range of nutrients to the tree. So great product for establishment.
So I have a quick question on that, on the NutriRoot. How would you go about selling or telling a customer, I would recommend NutriRoot for this tree, maybe not this tree, and then pricing that out for them as well?
So if you want to, this product is, it's a great fertilizer for trees that are stressed, a general feed. As far as when it is used as an establishment product, you just build it into your price knowing that this is the product that's going to save you that money in replacing that tree if the customer doesn't water it and doesn't take care of it and you can't be there all the time. So it's your own insurance policy. It's very inexpensive. For a 2 to 5 inch diameter tree at planting, you're looking at like $2 in material to guarantee your $300 planting. So if this saves 1 in 50 trees for you, it paid for itself 6 times. So it's your insurance that you're buying yourself. You can build it into the cost by adding a few bucks to the planting. And then just in your own, maintenance feedings, when you come back to feed that hedge, maybe in the fall and then the spring the next year, using this, over, an NPK, which, those salts can actually leach moisture away from the root zone when it's a limited root zone and actually cause drought stress. This is just going to be much more beneficial. So you just kind of build it in your pricing knowing it's what's best.
Go for it.
This NutriRoot product is really unique. I have one of my good customers down in the Delaware Beach areas treating almost over 12 NutriRoot, and he loves it. He's using it on his HOAs, and he's treating the trees in the spring and the fall. And what he's seen is this product improves all of his other treatments. His pesticide, fungicide, all those applications are improved, and the trees have just recovered and look tremendous with it. So this is a nice tool to use, when you don't know what to do. This is going to help, and specifically any new plantings, but even mature plantings. This is a great tool. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Great. Does it work for small shrubs? Because I've got one over here that I can't figure out why it keeps dying.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. You can use it on all sizes.
All right. We can keep on.
All right. So that covers that one pretty well. We'll go on to the next slide there. And the other benefit to these is they all play well together. They're all water-soluble liquids, so you don't need mechanical agitation like using, powdered products. We have kind of an easy-to-use chart, so you can pick your conditions. It's going to tell you what to start with, what else to use. And like I said, they all mix together and play really well. And a lot of those additives like Enviroplex, the Iron Plus, if you have chlorosis problems, the seaweed extracts, BioMP, these things cost pennies per gallon out of the hose as additives. They're extremely inexpensive. So, being that, fertility program to the site is, it gives you so much flexibility. So here we've just got, kind of some of our research that we've done on treated versus untreated with the NutriRoot. You can see on establishment, on young plantings from seed, you've got a much more even root system on that treated tree. And that's because trees are opportunistic. That root's going to grow where the most water, nutrients, and oxygen is available. So if you plant that and it's got really good growing conditions to one side, you're going to see it's a little weaker. But with that humic acid that's in there, with that seaweed extract to promote root growth, that tree's going to see opportunity in all directions and grow a much more even root zone. That's one of the best benefits you can have in establishment. It's a nice even root zone to give you a healthy root flare in the future. So this is down. There you go, Trent.
So this was one of the trees that my customer in the Delaware Beaches treated, and you can see the difference. 1.5 months later, how the tree recovers. So it gives many benefits. It's going to help with moisture. It's going to help break down the soil, as Kevin was saying, and the tree was able to recover. So it's a nice tool in the toolbox of your PHC programs to add in. Very simple to do. Go ahead, Kevin.
All right. It is always fun to see those pictures of trees turning around. So establishment is the most important factor, is water. Getting moisture available to the plant. Nothing is going to kill establishment faster than drought stress, which causes poor root growth. So that's what you really have to do. That's the single most thing, is you have to consider water. So surfactants and humectants in that NutriRoot is going to provide that root zone moisture more consistently over time. Even through a customer not watering properly or dry periods, it's going to help extend that moisture in the ground, even that dew that comes in at night, by condensing that in the root area, making it available. So another great time for it is drought survival can stress a lot of trees. That was one of those environmental conditions. Drought stress. Here in the Northeast, we had gypsy moth for a couple of years. We had some summer drought, and then two-line chestnut borer really started blowing up and killing tons of oak trees. So even now that gypsy moth is over, we're having parts right now, which is putting those oaks back in stress again. We still have high population of two-line chestnut borer. They're going in and killing these trees. We're getting oaks that are dropping dead with the leaves still on them, from those borers and drought stress. So this is where, products like a moisture managers or that NutriRoot fertilizer, you can put that down in, June, July, before it gets hot and dry. You'll have that benefit for when that drought strikes later in the season. Or if you see a tree that's in drought stress, use it to alleviate that and make sure it doesn't get any worse, because that is an inciting factor to, that viral of death. So making sure you get through survival, through those droughts with as little impact as possible is really what you have to do, because they're kind of becoming normal. Even though at the end of the year we may have our average rainfall, it's coming in more dramatic events. We'll have a thunderstorm that dumps 5 inches of rain in a weekend, and then it doesn't rain for 3 weeks. But the average for that 3-week period is 5 inches. So technically it's an average season for rain, but it is a drought. So, being able to work with those extreme weather patterns that are just getting a little more common will drag us, farther along in our plant healthcare programs. So poor crowing, fortunately, we love to have trees planted where they shouldn't be, small islands in parking lots, really have that heat island effect. Trees like cool soil, damp soil, organic soil, like we talked. So, and city trees in a, in the sidewalk or small backyards, this is where we'll never make that natural environment that tree wants. So we have to fake it in that scenario using, the humic acid, using the seaweed extracts. We'll get into plant growth regulators in this scenario also. So making sure that that tree can make the most of every nutrient and drop of water that it gets is what will ensure that tree's survival as long as possible. You'll see Zelkovas get planted in parking lots a lot up here, and they always get slammed with scale. All sorts of problems that just are associated with that high stress scenario. So again, trees planted poorly, not poorly, well, if they're planted poorly, they're stressed too. But even properly planted trees in these areas where they're not evolved to exist, we can use these products without the NPK that's going to stress them out even more, have a fertility program for the soils, and that's what's going to really increase our plant healthcare programs and add to that list of business, rather than going in there and just pruning out the dead till they die and then customers just sick of having trees. If we can just keep these trees treated twice a year with these products, that investment, there was hundreds of thousands of dollars to plant in these mini malls sometimes, for short money, we can keep those things going 3-4 times what they would exist without it. So, combat the poor growing conditions, the drought conditions, and get them. That's what builds a plant healthcare program sustainably. So these products, whether it's the NutriRoot or BioMP, the EnviroPlex, the Cytogro, these can be used with typical soil injectors, needle feeding. You can soil drench in mulch or around new plantings if it's, unless you're trying to get below a lawn panel. Soil drench is a great option when you use enough water. Tank mix, just spray it out onto the mulch and water it in. Or even we do even have some, hose end sprayers, which sometimes work out great because you can give that to the homeowner and just say, hey, put this onto your hose and water that hedge in, next month with it. If you give them something tangible in their hand, they're a lot more likely to do it. They'll remember it. And then, maybe even feel a lot worse when you call them back and say, hey, did you do that? Like, oh man, yeah, they'll remember to do it if you put something in their hand. Or for, small projects, have one in the truck. If you don't have a feed truck and, you're out doing your maintenance and you see a tree that's really drought stressed, yeah, you can plug that into the hose at the commercial property you're working at, just water in a tree real quick. You don't have to reschedule the job. Even if you just have a 5-gallon bucket to fill and dump it in, you can be really fast working with these things and use them in a lot of different ways. So now we'll move on to plant growth regulators, which are another, great, tool to have in the old arsenal. So we'll move into those. Let's see. All right. So paclobutrazol is the active ingredient in Shortstop, which is the plant growth regulator that we offer, and it's a cell elongation inhibitor. So what that does is it basically it reduces the amount of gibberellic acid in the tree, and that's what causes cells to elongate after they divide. So if you use a plant growth regulator like paclobutrazol, you're not limiting the amount of cells a tree puts on. You're limiting how much they grow after they're developed. So you'll still have just as many leaves, just as many flowers. And a question we get all the time is, will it reduce, acorns on oak trees or, fruit production on crab apples? The answer on that is no. It's not going to help you in that manner because it will still have just as many flower buds, just as many leaves, just as many fruits. And as that tree gets happier, it may even flower more, to be honest. But the benefits you get by limiting that cell elongation is there's a lot of leftover energy and carbohydrates for things like self-defense. It's going to increase that abscisic acid in the tree, which inspires trees to defend themselves more. So, that's basically in general just, how the Paclo is beneficial in trees other than slowing growth. So you can apply that product, anytime during the growing season. As long as that tree is transpiring and taking moisture up from the soil, you're going to have a, good uptake on that. The first year response isn't really that fast. So if you were to put this product on a tree in the spring, you're not really going to see the effects until the following year. That product has to be in the bud before it opens and expands. So you've got about a 1-year delay usually in application. And if you're really late in the fall, You might even see a slow first year response, maybe a 40% response the first year. But that second and third year is when you get about, you can get up to an 80% reduction in growth, especially on things like crab apples, and river birches tend to respond really well, tulip trees. So you're really going to start seeing those benefits a little bit the first year, but that second and third year is when that tree is really going to start getting a lot of extra energy to play with. And based on your growing season is how long it's going to last. Here in the Northeast, we get 3 years out of it, and that's because down in the more tropical you get, the longer the growing season is. So the more growth cycle you're trying to interrupt, so that tree is going to burn through that pack low a lot faster. So in southern Florida, where trees and shrubs can pretty much grow year round, it's going to get through that product a lot quicker. Up here in the Northeast, where our growing season is only a couple months, that's why we get a much longer residual out of it. So 3 years here in the Northeast. This is kind of the effects on oak. You can see mature oak tree, say it was putting on 12, 14 inches before it was treated. It's dropped down to about 3, 4 after that. You can see those leaves are a good deep green, very efficient chlorophyll in that leaf, thicker leaf tissue, much more efficient tree, more compact. If an oak tree is already 75 feet tall in the front yard, you don't need it putting on another foot or two of width a year. That's their natural instinct from when they're forest trees. They need to claim sunlight or die. So, their natural instinct is to fight through the rest, gain as much sunlight as possible, and then they can finally be happy, reproduce. Next seedling does the same thing. But taking them out of that natural environment, we can stop them from that predisposed condition they have to claim sunlight. When you see an oak in the middle of the front yard that's 20-inch diameter, it could have a 40-foot spread, 50 feet tall. A 20-inch oak in the forest could be 80 feet tall with the 20-foot canopy. So, using growth regulators on trees that already have plenty of sun, that is what's actually feeding them through photosynthesis, just restrict that growth. They don't need to put that much energy into it. It's unnecessary. Let them use that for self-defense. So next, just a kind of a different view of the same thing, looking at the previous year's growth to the treated growth on a similar stem. Yeah, I think sometimes it lags and the slide doesn't quite change for me quite in time. So here's just a good picture, just a good visual. You can see how much deeper green that is. So another effect that paclobutrazol has on plants is they actually become much more efficient in their ability to take in sunlight and produce energy. They also get a much thicker leaf tissue, so they lose less moisture during drought conditions. So trees control transpiration through the stomata on the leaves, but even if that stomata is closed, the dry air can still wick moisture out of that plant. So having a thicker leaf tissue causes less water loss during stressful conditions when the tree's trying to lock down. So you're going to lose a lot less water in those other periods of the year, and have that more efficient chlorophyll. You can see that deep green, full look. That's a happy tree. On red maple, just kind of showing you the effects of untreated on there on the right. Treated on the left, see much tighter growth structure. Just as many buds though, so you're still going to have just as many leaves, just a tighter growth structure. So this product is a suspended concentrate. It's soil applied. The suspended concentrate, it's just this is on a cosmetic grade clay carrier, so it stays in solution pretty well for being clay based. But you just have to keep it agitated a little bit, mix it up, and you'll be good to go. But this is on a very fine clay particle, so it stays in suspension very well. So again, we'll just kind of go over how it works real quick. You put this in the soil right around the base of the tree. It's going to draw it up and store that paclobutrazol in the bud for next year's growth. So, you can see in the bottom left there, kind of on the right and left side is where it's going to store the carbohydrates for the energy to start the next year. All trees kind of, we can go to the next slide. So in that top right-hand corner is kind of just zoomed in, and that stored energy is where the tree's always going to store some carbohydrates from the year before to get things rolling the next year. So branches, leaves, and trees kind of treat energy like their own individual bank accounts. So if you have a tree that has a lot of opportunity with sun, it's bringing in a lot more carbohydrates than a branch that's in the shade. That's why that side of the tree grows a lot faster. They save a lot more energy. They won't waste by sharing energy with a shaded part of the tree. If that side of the tree can't sustain itself and produce enough energy to survive, that's why you get dieback on the interior trees and in shady areas. But that's just to say that this product is going to mix in with those carbohydrates to be there in the next year for when the growth starts, and that's why there's a little bit of a delay in that efficacy. Again, thicker leaves, more chlorophyll, more fibrous roots, and a lot more defense compounds. So the tree energy theory, this is kind of just an average of what trees spend their energy on. Untreated shoot growth and reproduction are what they want to spend that energy on. In the woods, dominate the sky, get the sunlight. Reproduction, in case they fail at it, make sure there's a next generation. Then they're going to put some into root growth, stay stable. And then those defense compounds and storage of extra energy, those are a little lower on the list. And that stored energy is what they use up in drought scenarios. If they get injured in a storm and the top of the tree gets blown out, it's that built up stored energy that they're going to depend on. So if we go to the next slide, we can see that, that shoot growth energy comes way down. So in theory, that puts that energy into those other buckets. You're going to get a lot more fine root growth, which is going to help the tree take up more nutrients. You're going to get better defense compounds, which in oaks, they produce a lot of, tannins, which, insects don't like that chemical. So two-line chestnut borer is going to be a little more repelled by it. But, if that tree is weak and doesn't have a lot of defense compounds, the tannins are going to come down. The phenols in trees are going to come down. And that stored energy is also going to go up. So if there is stress, they'll have the energy to deal with it. So you can see a lot more benefits by being able to put that energy in different parts of what that tree is going to be doing. Then, so other benefits, reduced diameter growth. Sometimes, on city trees, we've all seen this, they get planted in small areas. And, those rings are meant to be broken out as the tree grows, but it usually doesn't happen. So they end up being girdled by that. So, once a tree's established, it's in poor growing conditions, that tree's there for aesthetics and you want it to survive in a city scenario. Just having that tree last longer is going to increase, a city's budget to plant more trees and care for trees better. A great way to have trees last longer is not let them girdle themselves in a planting ditch. And there we can see, that's what happens. So reduce that diameter growth is a benefit. People like to build patios around trees. Again, not only does this stress trees out, but diameter growth on that's going to lead to a lot of more construction costs when you have to keep expanding that ring. So taking a tree that a deck was built under, that homeowner already really enjoys that tree. They're enjoying the shade from it. Make sure that tree's going to last as long as possible. Get into that preventative plant health care that growth regulators offer us. Slow that tree down. Probably warn them not to power wash their deck with harsh chemicals also because it's over the root zone. But, we can have that tree last a lot longer for the homeowner and give them the benefits that they wanted when they built that patio. Tree houses. These are becoming real big things. People are putting $15,000, $20,000 into tree houses in the Northeast. I see it more often than I used to. There's a great tree to get some preventative plant health care on. Don't wait for that tree to go into decline. It's been stressed. It's had some holes drilled in it. But that tree now has a huge investment in it. So getting that preventative care into the trees like that is something that customers will generally always go for. When you bring that up, they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. I did put a lot of money into that tree. I probably should put some money into keeping it going. And here's just some untreated to treated year after year drought stress. You've got that marginal burn. That's the leaves dying back, so they lose less moisture. They decrease the area that there's moisture in. Birches tend to do this by just shedding a bunch of leaves. In August, you'll see river birches just get stressed, ditch the leaves. So when they're treated and you can keep more moisture in the plant, by that thicker leaf cuticle, you won't get that marginal burn as bad and you'll keep a fuller canopy longer. which helps that tree photosynthesize later in the season. Again, adding even more energy to those areas that tree can work with. So you're really filling up those energy buckets. Cytospora canker on blue spruce. There's been some great research on that where just taking that stress off the tree can really reduce the prevalence of these issues. You're not going to really see any growth regulation on a lot of spruces with paclobutrazol. Doesn't really affect spruces in that way, but they do still get a lot of those health benefits by growing a little more root, becoming a little more tolerant to moisture being wicked out of them. So you'll see less of a presence of that Cytospora canker. So we have sycamore anthracnose. There's two stages to that fungus. So, it's got the stage where it's, causing those lesions in the twigs, and it's got the stage of that disease, which is on the leaf, which can cause defoliation, and you'll see that browning. So what paclobutrazol can do is with that thicker leaf tissue, which Shortstop offers us 3 years up here in the Northeast of increasing that, of that cuticle, it makes it a lot more difficult for that fungal spore to kind of attach, and it breaks the life cycle of that disease in sycamore. So you can actually see, 90 to 95%, efficacy on fighting that disease with just a simple root drench of a growth regulator and not worrying about trying to spray a bunch of fungicides all spring long. And the years that it's the worst is when it's cool and wet for extended periods of time. So it's really hard to treat this disease foliarly. So injections work, but growth regulators also work. So here we're avoiding using any pesticides or fungicides, using a growth regulator to break the life cycle of this disease. So great option for sycamore anthracnose. Here's just kind of a view of that treated to an untreated leaf. That's the kind of the visual symptom of it. You get that interveinal dieback on the sycamore versus that nice, healthy dark green, thick leaf that you have with a Shortstop treated tree. And then it's like this with a lot of leaf spot diseases. This is, aspen leaf spot. This is going to help with, crab apples, with scab. It's very effective in that manner. It's not labeled for use on fruit trees. You wouldn't want to use this on an apple tree in an orchard. But for crab apples that are always defoliating early in the season, this is a great option to keep that tree looking great and slow the growth, because crab apples often are just, you're always pruning them. The homeowners want to keep them smaller, so let's just keep them a little denser. You don't have to prune off a bunch of flower buds all the time. They can look more natural and avoid that disease. So we'll move on to chlorosis, which is another problem with trees. It's just a lack of available iron. Great stressor. You see it a lot in, heavy clay soils, farther out west. Here in the Northeast, we don't have a lot of chlorosis issues, but it does come up in new construction quite fairly. So this is one that is good to get ahead of, because trying to adjust the pH of a soil and make iron available can take a very long time, and lowering pH is very hard to do in the long run. So, we have some other solutions for chlorotic trees that will give you faster results, more predictable results, and give you time to work with that soil in the long run. So there are other things that can look like chlorosis, waterlogged soils, sometimes mite damage with stippling. So there are a lot of other things that can have that look. But, when it comes down to it and you do a soil sample and you can see that the pH is too high, there might be iron there, but it's just not available. So, that's when you have a chlorosis issue if you end up, sending a soil sample out and kind of ruling out these other things. So that's kind of right in the middle there is, the pH where a lot of these things become available to plants. That's kind of the happy zone, and that's when iron is available. So when you get those heavy clay soils and that pH goes to alkaline, towards that high end is when you really see iron drop off really fast. In acidic soils where the pH is very low, you see iron becomes extremely available. That's, blueberries love very acidic soil. They like it down near 5 because, that's the nutrient package they enjoy. But kind of that sweet zone right there from, 6.5 to 7.5 is just the average that trees are looking for. So when we have that iron unavailable, we'll kind of move on and we'll tell you what you can do about it. So improved appearance in maples. You can see August 2018, and we kind of waited off until fall to treat that tree, and then July the following year. You can see, and this was also combined with shortstop, and just that kind of 1-2 combination, having it save more energy, defend itself, and that's obviously a drought condition, hot area, and making iron available. That tree turned around real quick. Again, here we just have a quick August 2018, July 2019, combining growth regulators and injectable iron. Injectable iron gives you immediate results. It usually can last 2 years, so you can get a 2-year residual on an iron injection, and then the 3-year on the growth regulator. So you can turn those trees around quick and get yourself years to work with the soil. It'll take probably, might take you 7-10 years to amend that soil to make iron available, if ever, or just every other year, every third year, you work with it with these products and you can keep it going, faking that natural environment and having the trees use their energy more wisely. It's another year over year. This is a pin oak down in Texas, I believe. You can see very chlorotic, weak growth year over year. Next we have, just again, more parking lot trees. Left tree was treated, right tree untreated. Year over year, 1 year's difference, that's it. So you can see that tree just looking much healthier over time. Being able to retain that moisture with the thicker leaf tissue. And then here we are 2 years after treatment on the next slide. And you can really see that difference. You've saved that tree for what would have become a removal to a nice, beautiful, healthy tree. And that's a very visual result. And a customer will stick with that plant healthcare program. If you were just trying to feed that tree, with your traditional NPK style fertilizers, it's going to continue to decline and die. And the owner of that complex probably won't let you do a lot of plant healthcare. They're going to think plant healthcare is a waste of money. So doing it successfully and ethically with dependable results is how you really grow that business year over year. He'll stick with that plan for forever. So again, this is just that combination, injectable iron, growth regulator, another tree year over year. So you can see this is a very predictable, long-lasting results. So there are some considerations when using growth regulators and iron. You want to inject iron in a late fall, or you can do it in the spring and early summer, but iron can be phytotoxic when injecting in trees. So if you try to respond to a chlorotic tree in June or July when it's hot, you have to use a very low rate of iron. So it'll have a very short residual in the tree. And again, chlorosis, usually you have enough time to work with it when you can wait till fall. You could add something like, the NutriRoot immediately, which has some chelated iron that's available right away. Get that in the soil. And then in the fall, you can inject at a high rate when it's cooler and the phytotoxicity risk is down. And that's when you're going to get that 2-year residual on that iron injection. So, that immediate response, put some iron in the soil that's chelated and available. It's going to be a short term, get you through a month or two, get your growth regulators down to thicken that leaf tissue for the next year. And then in the fall, go in and inject that iron at a high rate to get a long residual in there. So again, it's that combination on those chlorotic trees where we really see the best results. So the application method for the growth regulators is very simple. You can either just dig a small moat around the base of the tree. If you want to go to the next slide. So if you're doing the moat on the left side there, you only need to dig that about, 2 or 3 inches deep, a couple inches wide, right around the base of the tree, and you can pour it right around. If you have a tough soil and a strange root flare, maybe injecting around the base of the tree would be a more viable option. So you can inject this 4 to 6 inches deep into the soil and spaced evenly around the base of the tree. Unlike tree injection, when you aim for the root flares, when you're doing growth regulators, you kind of aim between the root flares. So you don't end up kind of just stabbing a root with your needle feeder because you are going to be close to the trunk of the tree. you want to be kind of, within a foot or so of the trunk on the soil injection, 4 to 6 inches deep, evenly distributed around the base, or you want to dig that moat and just pour it in. In mulch beds, it's pretty easy to just make the moat and just pour it around pretty fast. It has a very expansive label for growth regulators. Every tree grows different. So there's different categories from, silver maples that really like to grow to something that grows much slower where you'd want to use a low rate. So, having these different categories, it's very easy to kind of look this over and just know how much product you're supposed to use. You have to use the right amount with these growth regulators. You can over-regulate a tree. If you put too high of a dose on a tree, you can regulate it to the point where the leaves will be very small and you can put that tree into a very stressful decline. So, the label is the law, but the label is very specific. It's very helpful, easy to read and follow. So other things to consider, like I said, label's the law, follow the label. You can do wrong with this just like anything else. So, follow the recommended doses. We do have newer labels that have, updated rates. We're going to have a label out to treat trees volumetrically, trees and shrubs. So if things are sheared down in size, we'll have that label, keep your eye out for it, where you can say this is a 20 cubic foot canopy. It's not quite based on that 20-inch diameter stem. Now you're basing it on the canopy or in a hedgerow, that total volume of canopy. So it's going to be a much easier label to work with when people have those questions of what to do on a limited size canopy on a large trunk tree or in a hedge with multi-stem things. You can just consider that by volume instead of stem diameter. Environmental conditions, soil conditions, and some other things like girdling roots and things. It can't fix everything. So you do have to look at that plant's physical characteristics and what else is going on. There's no silver bullet in plant healthcare, but just general decline, general stress, these are going to help. But always keep your eye out for what else might be going on causing stress. So here we have some, girdling roots on a tree. This is a good time to use a growth regulator. You're going to have to prune these girdling roots out. So you're doing root damage to the tree. It's still using that root. That root's collecting nutrients. Even though it's harming the tree, it's still offering some benefits. So when you air spade that tree out and cut those girdling roots, applying a growth regulator after that is going to help that tree grow the roots that are remaining to take over for that loss of nutrients that girdling root was providing. It was hurting the tree and it has to go. It was providing some benefits also that we have to take into consideration. When you have trees that are already in fair decline from construction damage, you could be 4 years after the problem was created. This is when the energy stores are very low in that tree. It's been a sink for many years, putting out much more energy than it's taking in via the roots. So consider that it is a good viable option to help this tree, but once it's in that spiral of the decline, just make sure those customer expectations are realistic on trees like this. Definitely worth trying to save, but have those realistic expectations. And another thing is the growth regulation amount that it takes to control a tree will kill lawn. So you can see in this application method, the trench wasn't put around the base of the tree. They just tried to do a basal drench and it did kill the grass. So apply it properly or you will see drastic effects. And if you kill the lawn, homeowners are going to assume it's bad for the tree also. And it just starts a conversation that's uncomfortable. So by applying it to the tree specifically, you're going to keep that damage to a minimum to the rest of the landscape, especially on inclines. It does flow downhill. So, shrubs downhill, if it rinses down, will be affected more than the tree you applied it to. So this is a great example of how you would sell this as a preventative plant healthcare. This is a very common as arborists. Homeowner calls us up and they're concerned about trees with recent construction nearby, and right on the phone call, right out of the gate, we're asking questions like, how big are the trees? What kind of work was done? How close was the construction? But why are we asking these questions before we go to the visit? Because we have a lot of information at our fingertips, especially with the internet these days. And we have best management practices for construction and trees. So we know how close construction can be done before it causes stress to a tree. So if you have a 4-foot diameter tree and construction is done within 6 feet, you're going to impact the amount of nutrients that tree can take up. So it's 1.5 times the diameter in feet is that radius that you need. So it's quite a large area. So knowing that BMP and having those questions presented, we can come up to that sale with some answers. And also, we have here is another chart that has diameter of tree to how close you can get to it before you cause structural damage. So, if you get within, 9-10 feet of a 20-inch diameter tree, you're getting close to that where you can cause structural issues. So it's also good to know when construction may have gone too far. And a growth regulator, again, keep that canopy down. You could see some serious damage from that tree down the road. So here's the example of how the sale might go down when you're on site. So the homeowners, they're savvy, so they're thinking about their trees. That's what they called in the first place. They're like, I put in my new driveway, I graded out the lawn. I want to make sure we get these trees fertilized. So, right off the bat, a lot of people would just say that's what the customer wants, that's what the customer gets. But, we're doctors in a way where, we have to do what's appropriate. We don't go to a doctor's office and tell them what to do. We take their requests of what we should be doing. So we have to know those best practices. So we shouldn't fertilize trees that are construction damaged with any fast release ammonium nitrite, fast release nitrogens that are kind of salt based. That's actually going to wick away moisture from that tree and put it into a faster spiral of death. You could take a stressed out tree from construction, put down a high NPK fertilizer and kill that tree almost immediately. So, the ISA put out some great information on that, we just should not be fertilizing trees with fast release fertilizers after construction. So what we should be considering is those growth regulators to help that tree recover faster without causing moisture to be wicked away. So a combination of, something like a NutriRoot, which is low NPK without any fast release nitrogen, but has root growth hormones, those surfactants, humectants, and humates, and then that growth regulator, we're going to avoid those problems that you would see 4 or 5 years down the road, because that's really when you see construction damage, is after that tree burns through all those extra carbohydrates it's been storing for that rainy day, so to say. So again, great preventative work. You see that construction, use a growth regulator, get those roots growing again, keep the canopy down, roots growing happy, and you'll see way more success in keeping trees viable after construction using things like this as products and keeping away things like boring insects on stressed out trees. So you get your growth control, you get a better appearance, increased drought tolerance, reduced leaf scorch. It's going to fight disease. It's going to save you money. It's going to save your customers money, and it's going to allow you to have more customers because it's you're only there every doing quick applications, checking out the trees every couple of years, and you can increase that customer base. So weak trees do get sick. So like we said, these are the inciting factors that we just worked on. So here's just a quick rundown of how to get them out of that inner spiral that allows us the time to work on those long-term projects. So stress, your borers, Phytophthora, armillary root rot, dieback, poor compartmentalization. These are all issues associated with it. So next slide. We have Arborjet, which is a systemic injectable fungicide and plant health elicitor. So this is going to help with, armillary root rot, things of that nature, those fungal stressors, and it's going to get that tree to start defending itself a little faster. That phosphorus acid is going to incite that tree's response to protect itself. So that's going to help with, cankers, fungal pathogens, and just start that tree in that thought process or reactive process of self-defense. And again, it just creates an unfavorable host environment for the fungi, and it causes those plant health effects by just increasing resistance, thickening cell walls, increasing root mass, and just firing that immune system off really quickly, basically. Some other common diseases, Phytophthora pithum, Pythium, beech decline, anthracnose, black spot, apple scab. A lot of these things, because you didn't treat with the growth regulator. So this is what you're actually called for. This is what you're looking at. So, for solutions to that, we have, paclobutrazole, propiconazole as an injectable, or you can use it as a foliar spray on the next slide. So propizole, and a little bit goes a long way. So this is a very effective way to fight those diseases until you can take the stress off. You can see the prevalence of anthracnose on sycamore. When injected with propiconazole, you're going to keep those lesions on the twigs greatly reduced over time. Get that growth regulator on there, break the cycle of that disease, and then you're pretty good sailing after that. So, other great things that injectable propiconazole is good for, Dutch elm disease, oak wilt, those are two things that there is no amount of preventative work you can do to make trees resistant to oak wilt and Dutch elm. Sometimes when the only option is to, oak wilt, inject a tree with propizole, and you don't have to worry about that. When you get 2 years control, pretty much hands down, tried, proven, effective. Dutch elm disease, very effective again. So, but both have to be done preventatively for the most part. Dutch elm disease, once it has it, very rarely treated therapeutically. That's a fast-moving disease. Same with oak wilt, very fast-moving vascular wilt disease. So being preventative ahead of those with propiconazole is the best way to fight those issues that can't be treated any other way. And then for the boring insects, we have, triage. Triage G4, tried and true, proven emamectin benzoate, great active ingredient. Emerald ash borer is another one that no matter what, you can't keep that bug away with as much healthy soils and nutrition as you want. So, again, this is the preventative control for that. Therapeutically, it actually works very well also. You can save trees from 40% decline with triage, no problem. We have a new triage R10 that's out, which is even more efficient. The dose for that is 2 mils per diameter inch. So when you combine that with a quick jet air, you can treat a 20-inch tree in 5-10 minutes, even in drought conditions when it's usually hard uptake or even when it's raining. So we've come a long way with treating for borers in the triage line. But the other things that the other borers that do come along in stress, again, two-lead chestnut borer, bronze birch borer, love stressed out trees. So treat with an injectable to knock that borer out and then take the stress off the tree. Also, emamectin benzoate works great against, gall wasps, leaf-feeding caterpillars, as long as you get it in there beforehand. I mean, you can treat for gypsy moth in September the year before. If you're there preemptively, kind of just like Pacla, it'll get up into that bud area. So in the next year, when it expands, it's there to be helpful. Conifer mites, gall wasps, other great things. But most of all, this is my favorite section of the presentation. The best way to grow your plant healthcare business is by knowing the many benefits of trees other than just the common ones, like people like shade and they sequester carbon. So explaining why people should love their trees more and should care for their trees more goes a long way. So the benefits of trees. They provide a lot of monetary benefits that people don't realize they're getting. So a single tree near a home can offer hundreds of dollars in reduced heat, stormwater mitigation, reducing stormwater runoff, which causes erosion, cutting that wind, so in the winter you're lowering your heat bills. So if it costs, $100 every 2 years to keep a tree alive, they're actually making $50 a year by keeping it, by not knowing that tree's been paying them. If they take it away or let it die, they're going to incur those bills. So being able to explain that it's actually making money by spending money works out a lot. You'll sell a lot more jobs by even there's simple calculators out there to put in the diameter of a tree to how much it's probably given in benefits. Local businesses, working with municipalities and things of that nature. Studies have proven, and there's all these links at the bottom to these studies. More trees and landscaping in a business district increases business flow and increases money spent. So you'll have an economic benefit in your town by having those little trees on Main Street. Having that well-planted, beautiful Main Street slows people down, cools the area, actually lowers the heat effect, and people will spend more money. So it's good for business. Trees are great for business. The prevalence of ADHD in children. Plants can greatly reduce stress on people. So when children get stressed out, especially in urban environments, if you can take them to a park environment, even just 20 minutes, it can calm them down and get them to perform a little better. So having trees and playgrounds, keeping those benefits nearby to help your attention span. You know, they did this study by taking a bunch of kids, stressed them out, and gave them mental aptitude tests, and then brought them for a walk in the city, in a park, or in the woods, re-administered similar tests, and found that they performed much better after being near trees. Presence of or the prevalence of asthma. People that live in poorly planted areas have a much more higher risk of getting asthma. So, just having an increase in tree canopy will have a great effect on long-term health. Asthma is a lifelong problem. So, having those areas with poor tree plantings, with no street trees, the people born there and raised there are going to have to fight asthma for their entire life. So, more trees can stop that lifelong problem. Crime. So, more trees, less crime. Some people, think people could hide behind trees, but this study in urban planning shows that increase in tree canopy caused about a 10% increase, lowered the crime by about 12%. This was in 2 Baltimore City planting areas, and they found that the better planted the common areas were, the more people went outside to have picnics under the trees, enjoy the shade, and they ended up meeting their neighbors. Once they knew their neighbors, they looked out for each other and knew what was normal activity in the neighborhood. So it wasn't as easy to commit a crime when you know all your neighbors, people's behavior, you care for each other. So it increased that social bond and made a safer neighborhood by having those trees available. This one, unfortunately, we were able to learn a lot about trees and heart disease because of emerald ash borer. When it killed tons of ash around the Chicago area, in those upper scale suburbs, the prevalence of cardiovascular diseases went up 25% after all those ash trees died. Whether it was because those trees left and they stopped getting that natural stress relief from the trees, or there was just increased pollution in the air that trees naturally filter out the dust and things like that. That combination of the two increased cardiovascular events like heart attacks and other lung issues by 25% when those trees died. So you're going to have a lot more issues, lower life expectancy in lower canopy area. The healing properties. So having trees near hospitals is tried and true proven to have a faster time getting out of the hospital. Even just the view of a tree can increase how fast you get over surgery and reduce your risk of infection. So now VAs when they're built, have parks built near them with walking trails and park benches. It has amazing benefits for PTSD and healing from surgery faster and getting over physical wounds as well as mental. Lowers your blood pressure. This is huge stuff. Just being able to work in those ways. So have a lot of trees near hospitals. Have parks nearby. Maintain those areas. Long-term health. Again, here's just more socializing. Here in this community where they had 28 blocks, a huge compound near Chicago, they were able to lower the crime 52% there. And cut down on violent crimes by about almost 10 or 20%. So there was almost half as many crimes after they planted one half of that complex area versus the other. It lowers stress which causes cortisol, which causes people to gain weight. So, hanging out in trees can just keep you physically healthier by lowering that stress. Those lower levels of cortisol in your body, which is a stress hormone, cause you to retain body fat, cause you to just your body to be in response mode. Naturally, trees are calming. I would imagine it's because, we've evolved with trees here. Trees were here first. So they've been here the whole time people have existed. We've looked for them for food. We've looked to them for shelter. We've looked to them for all sorts of great things. So having them nearby makes us feel like we're in an environment that we can thrive in. If there's no trees and you're just on a city block, you can feel that stress, how it's just not natural. There's a lot more noise. You're not gonna have as good a focus. So, lowering that stress and those stress hormones are very beneficial also. The cooling effect, you can lower the temperature in a city by up to 10 degrees with a canopy cover that is over 40%. In European countries, this is very important. In the United States, almost everybody has an air conditioner. So, it's catching on a little slower here. But in Europe, where there's not as much air conditioning, it's not as prevalent, it's not as accepted. This is really big out there. As temperatures rise, that's why they have a much more higher prevalence of elderly dying in heat waves, is because of the lack of air conditioning. But with proper planting and lowering the temperatures 10 degrees, you're going to have a lot less of that heat wave effect on people when it does happen. So that canopy is going to really lower that temperature, bring it down a bit. Stormwater mitigation. So this is your public utilities. Just a regular tree with a 33-foot crown can drink 332 gallons of stormwater per storm. So that's going to keep all that from washing away sands and salts and erosion and just ending up going through the municipal, either going through the sewer treatment plant to get the water treated, or if they don't have one, washing all that, all those just natural, pollutants that we get into bodies of water. So, keeping a much higher tree canopy is going to stop that washing of pollutants into waterways if it's not going to be treated. Like the city of Burlington, Vermont has quite a few ash trees in, in the wetlands area to Lake Champlain. It's a big hill that leads to the lake in Burlington. So, if all of their 300 or 400 ash trees die, that's going to be tens of thousands of gallons of stormwater running into Lake Champlain that could have been mitigated by keeping those trees alive. So, keeping trees going to keep those pollutants to be processed by a tree or in the soils is much better than letting them wash into a sewer treatment plant or into a body of water. So there we go. Thank you for hanging out with us. It's always great to try to give you the information we have and keeping up with the newest things. And I hope you enjoyed. And thank you to TreeStuff for having us here. Much appreciated.
Phil, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions here. First of all, I want to just get this out of the way. If you want any of the information that is on these slides, you can go ahead and email media@treestuff.com, and we can see what we can get to you. I know I had someone asking about where they can find the slide on the pH levels and the nutrient uptake of that. We had someone asking about that and a couple of the other slides. So is there a place that you guys know of where you can go to find information like that easily and quickly?
Through most of your university state extensions, they would be able to help you find those kinds of things.
Okay.
But other than that, you could just Google available, micro and macro nutrients versus pH, and you probably find it.
Okay. Well, I have a question here about what NutriRoot will work on, what your paclibutrazole will work on, the growth regulators and stuff like that. Is there a place that we can go where we can find yes, it will work for this symptom that is on this kind of tree. Um, how can you find what you can diagnose that for?
So right now, there's just several white papers out that have been done through peer-reviewed study on the Cytospora canker, on the crabapple leaf drop. But because it's making an unfavorable host, it's not considered a fungicide or an insecticide because it's not really killing a fungus or an insect. It's making it an unfavorable host. So we're just starting to really see the research come out on the benefits of what diseases it control. We just know that it has great benefits in increasing a tree's ability to better defend itself, and slowly that list of diseases it helps is growing. But unfortunately, there's not a single place yet where it has all those things listed out.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Trent, for him?
I was going to ask Kevin, some of the things that I think people always want to know. How do you try to grow a customer list? When you were doing it, what were some of the ways you went after customers or advertised in that sense?
So the first thing that you want to go after to grow your business is find the top 4 pests in your area. And pests that are always going to be there. So every hemlock in southern New England is going to have hemlock woolly adelgid. Every ash basically is going to have EAB. Every elm is going to have Dutch elm's disease. And most of your 2 and 3 needle pines are going to be affected by, turpentine beetles. So once you know your top 4 pests, then you want to get tree inventories for your pruning customers, so you know which customers own those trees, so you can direct advertise to them. So building a tree inventory on all your sales quotes is what you want to do to grow that list as fast as possible. And having a way to reference those tree species in some kind of a database that you can search. So having good software to be able to go through that and labeling. So even if you have a bunch of customers where you haven't been there in a while, in the winter, if you're slow, you can just offer a free walk around with a homeowner and say, hey, we're offering tree inventories now to see what you've got. Just to get on the property, know what they have, and build that list so you can direct market problems to people spend money to save those trees. So if somebody put a cable in an ash, they'll probably treat it for emerald ash borer. They may not know it's a problem or an ash, but once you tell them and they're already trying to preserve the tree, that's a new customer. So best thing you can do is inventory properties and then direct market to the biggest problems in your area.
Okay, great. Do you think it's important to build like a local route, like try to keep your customers close to build the route for your technician to get more done in a day? Is that something you took into account when planning in that sense to get a higher profit per day for the technician?
Yeah, so there's 2 different ways to go about that. When you first start, you want to, if you have limited equipment, you want to group things by what you're doing in a day. So, if you only have a 1-tank spray rig, you want to do all your feeding that day. You don't want to have to switch between a fungicide spray, an insecticide spray, and a fertilization. You want to group routes by service. Once you have enough customers to have a nicer unit and more versatility, then you would want to get things done as efficiently as possible, which is, fertilize this person. If the neighbor needs an insecticide treatment, you would inject their tree and then, spray a fungicide at the next one, and then you would group by area. So I'd say in the beginning, when you have a few customers, route by problem. Once you have an increased customer base, route by area.
Okay. What do you think an average day should be for a technician to get out, when you're starting out?
So depending on the work being done, most companies with a plant healthcare rig out, once you have enough business to do that efficiently, you're trying to get $2,000 to $3,000 of production per route, generally for plant healthcare.
Okay. And is that the number when you decide you need another technician? If you're doing over 3,000 a day, you may add another technician then? Is that kind of the guidelines you would say?
I would do it at less than that. So when you get close to capacity, you want to add another tech. And that's where it's very helpful if you have a tree company also, because you can keep them busy when they're not necessary. But if you ever get maxed out, you have to turn customers down and you can't respond to problems. If a rig breaks down, you're done in the water and the problems just go on. So you always want to add another tech when you're at about 65, 70% capacity, in my experience.
Okay. I guess another question I would say is, what's the basic equipment, Kevin? What do you think you need to get started? I mean, what's the bare minimum spray-wise and that sense? What do you think you need to get going in this business?
So to get started, the basics are, the standard is a 200-gallon fertilization spray rig with a 10, 12 horsepower engine with a Kappa 75 or something. And that's going to spray 15, 20 feet in the air. So you can deal with low problems on shrubs, however you may choose, but have injection equipment to treat large trees. As soon as you get over that 20 feet area, that's where you're getting into the trees that are worth a lot of money, that people will spend a lot of money on. So you need a way to treat those trees without having really expensive equipment. So, tree injection equipment that's, $500 to $2,000, very, very easy to pay for itself, and just treating a few trees and bringing those trees into your market is the best and most affordable way to get into plant healthcare. Have that 200-gallon rig so you can do fertilizations, spot treatments on shrubs, low problems, and have that injection equipment for tall trees and tight areas. And it's always good to have pesky neighbors when you can't spray, when you don't want to spray, when it's environmental risk. You can have that problem, and then as you get more, you can buy, a rig that could, treat 80 feet tall if you wanted to, with, like hor oil on hemlocks in an appropriate scenario. But with just a small rig that can spray low and injection equipment, you can be very versatile and treat almost all problems.
Great. And anything you think to help train technicians or knowledge to get started to add that first technician, or a good way to go about finding that?
Yeah, training can be difficult in plant healthcare. Getting people with that experience. So that's also another reason it's nice if you're going to hire somebody that doesn't know a lot of what they're doing. Get them on a tree crew also, because on a tree crew you're going to start to learn the identification characteristics of trees pretty quick. In plant healthcare, if you're just on plant healthcare trying to learn tree ID, and say you may not even, that tech may not know an oak from a maple yet even. You never know. They're only at the base of the tree when you do plant healthcare. If you put them on a tree crew, they're going to touch every part of that tree. They're going to grab that limb. They're going to see the leaves. They're going to see the buds. It's going to be in their hands literally to help them ID that tree and learn it much faster. So sometimes getting a PHC tech on a tree crew is going to really help out. Getting them on pruning crews, they're really going to learn their shrubs a lot faster that way. And they're not going to slow down those plant healthcare crews, which are used to being one tech teams or two tech teams. So you've either got to get, and eventually they do have to ride with experienced plant healthcare technicians to learn the ropes. But bringing them in before you need them to be at 100% capacity and having them work throughout a company is the best way. Tree ID is the best way to start learning plant healthcare.
Awesome. That's great, Kevin. Cale, that was mainly the questions I had, unless there's anything else, but that's all I have.
Okay, I got a few other questions here. I've got Greg Looper is asking how you go about coming up with your prices to start with.
So for pricing, you want to hit that profit margin at the end of the day. Typically fertilizations, you would charge either by gallon or diameter of tree being treated. Injections and fertilizations are very easy to price by the size of the tree. You measure the diameter. Tree injections, depending on the area you're in, for residential purposes, tend to be between 10 to 15. They average around 12 or 13. So tree injections, $12 to $13 an inch. Your product cost. Some injection materials are much cheaper than others. So you want your profit to be about $9 to $13 per diameter inch over product cost. So know what your product costs you, break that down to what it's going to cost you per inch, build your profit off of that. Fertilization, fertilizers and all these soil amendment products aren't that expensive. So, you're going to want to be around, $4 to $7 per gallon out of the hose, and you're using, say 2 gallons per diameter inch on a mature tree. So, you're kind of building it out, things like that. As far as, spraying goes, all plant healthcare, you want to have a minimum of $75 to $100 at least just to show up. In spraying, if you have an efficient sprayer, you want to profit $3 or $4 a gallon over cost on material generally. But at the end of the day, it's hitting that, 2,000 to 2,500 over material is what you want to aim for.
Okay.
Kevin, do you think?
Oh.
I was going to add something real quick. Do you think it's smart when you're going out and say the customer has that one tree that you might have a initial visit cost if the tree is going to be $70, $80 a tree, maybe you have $100, $150 site visit cost that goes with everything when you go out the door? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, generally people never charge to go check out a tree and see what's wrong with it. But you do, if you're going to go work on a tree, you have to have a minimum site visit charge. You don't want to drive somewhere and lose money. So in scenarios like that, sometimes if you've got one little problem and you need to make $100, $125 on that for it to make sense, look around and find another problem to treat and then say, we'll do both of these issues for that price, just to make it worth it for the customer also.
Okay.
I have one here, managing large live oaks with 30 to 65 inch DBH. Do you usually, if you're going to use something, would you usually go for a tree injection or would you go for a drench?
For live oaks, I would recommend they visit our website and get in touch with our Southeast Regional Tech Manager or our Western or Texas area manager. I'm from the Northeast. I don't know a lot about live oaks, so I will defer that question to a more knowledgeable base.
Okay, that's a perfect answer. I do have a request here to chat a little bit about the necessary licenses for PHC operations and how you handle that with a business and with new operators.
So every state is different. You would have to contact your regulatory entity and ask them what they require. A lot of states don't require any licensing to use these soil amendment products or fertilizers. So, getting a tech out there when they have to work alone on that side of the business, you can't do a lot of damage. The licensing for that. A lot of other times in other states, just a general applicator's license and supervision is great. Sometimes a supervisor just has to be available by phone. And we don't really offer many restricted use pesticides, whether, besides the triage 10 and the original triage, which are just very efficient, but, you really have to check with your own state on that to kind of build your techs as necessary. You don't need everybody licensed to the hills usually.
Okay. I think we'll probably do one more question here. Is there, do you have any tips for selling to organizations such as a homeowners organization or to a city versus selling to homeowners?
Yeah, you're going to want to go to public meetings and really see what, if you're trying to treat homeowners associations, you have to set yourself apart with their board meetings and try to get an opportunity to speak at them. If you go to an HOA and don't get a chance to speak to the board at their events, they're going to come down to price alone, and real plant healthcare does cost money. So you'll lose if you just sit there writing numbers on a page and hand them in. So get the opportunity to explain why what you do is better. So go to the homeowners associated meeting, ask for the chance to speak.
Kale, I would say too with the HOAs, offering to come in and talk about different services, pruning, writing them. If you have that background, with an arborist, that's always an awesome opportunity. And doing a free presentation, about pruning practices is a way to get in front of the board. And then once you become friends with them, that opens opportunities. And municipalities, going to the town meetings, offering certain things, stuff like that will always be a plus.
Okay. And for homeowners, when you're talking about preventative treatments, that you're going to have to schedule coming back later, maybe 2 years, 3 years down the road. Do you have any tips or tricks on that? Because that sounds, especially if a tree that looks healthy, is there anything that you, any tips for getting them into that system and selling that?
Yeah, so right off the bat, building that expectation that it needs to be repeated to keep that tree healthy, not letting it go into decline. Staying in touch with that customer also. Even if you don't see them every year, send them an email in the winter just to remind them you're there. Make sure they don't forget about you as a business if you don't see them often enough. And then before that treatment happens in the winter, mail them a reminder and say, we'd like to come out to treat your tree this year. Remind them of why. Just stay in contact with your customers. Don't let them forget about you.
Okay.
I would say a yearly plan too, to property and just general PHC inspections. Maybe it's a basic $150 for an inspection. Just try to be on the property every year, spring or something like that. Some sort of program.
All right. Great. I lied. I have one more here that she did ask this a little bit earlier. When you were talking about the growth regulator, talking about the percent effectiveness after 1, 2, and 3 years, can you clarify with that uptick in effectiveness, is that cumulative after your applications?
So once you get it past that initial first year and you get those better results the second and the third, as you continue to apply that every third year, you stay in that maximum benefit zone. But yes, the benefits do compound over years because that tree's been healthier longer and longer and longer. So every year you keep that tree storing more energy and expending less, it's going to become healthier and be more beneficial.
All right. Great. Well, thank you very much, guys, for doing this. I think there's a lot of really good information in this. If you have any questions, if anyone here has any questions, you can go ahead and email either of them. Here, let me get the screen cap up again. Give them an email. Give us an email at media@treestuff.com or phc@treestuff.com. And I just want to give a quick reminder that the applications for the rescue rally are due August 19th. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, a lot of the information that they talked about here, if you rent the TreeU Certified Arborist Preparation course, he goes into a lot of the biochemistry and biology of plants, and talking about CECs and things like that in there as well. So that's a great resource that you can look into. I'm going to post the quiz here in a moment. When you take that quiz, if you get a passing score, you'll get your CEUs. It may take 6 to 8 weeks for the ISA to update it, so just keep an eye out for that. So once again, thank you very much, guys, for doing this, and have a nice night.
Thanks for having us, Cale.
Thank you.